Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Barth, and I work for Adoption-Related Services as the Latvia Program Director. I will be your moderator this evening for our webinar. I will be talking about a number of different topics in regard to making an adoption plan from Latvia. If, after our talk, you would like to receive additional information or documents from us, please do not hesitate to ask. We can also send you resources for finding adoption grants and loans as well, so don't hesitate to let us know if that would be helpful to you. Thank you all again for joining us this evening. We hope that you've all had a fabulous Christmas holiday, and we wish you all the best for a happy and healthy new year. We can see by your attendance on this call that you may be interested in making an adoption plan from Latvia. For those of you who have hosted children from Latvia this winter, we know how hard it must have been to send your kiddos home, and we hope that you can see them again very soon. Please know that we welcome clients from all of the various hosting programs who work within Latvia, and we currently represent families who have hosted through quite a few different organizations. We would be honored to work with anyone listening in tonight. For those of you who have not hosted a child, we think you will find the information discussed tonight just as valuable. We thought that we would offer this conference call to give potential adoptive families an opportunity to learn a little bit more about us here at Adoption-Related Services and what we do, as well as to learn a little bit more about the adoption process from Latvia. This is just a brief introduction to all of that, and we know that you will likely have many additional questions as you learn more. If we cannot answer all of your questions this evening, we do invite you to call us directly anytime, and we can walk you through this process in greater detail. The topics we would like to cover with you this evening are up on your screen now. We will be discussing information about our agency, about our director, Barbara Lorenzo, about myself as the Latvia Program Director, an introduction to our other team members, a little bit about the history of adopting, the country of Latvia, and the process of adopting a child from Latvia. We will also discuss fees associated with an adoption from Latvia, and this is a good opportunity to let you know that we will be waiving our $300 application fee for families who have hosted a child this winter. We want to talk about financing your adoption expenses, some hot buttons regarding adoption from Latvia, facts about adoption from Latvia, contact information, and finally, at the very end, we are happy to be able to share with you photos of some of our families who have adopted children from Latvia. As I had mentioned before, my name is Kelly Barth, and I thought I would start off by telling you a little bit about our agency, about our director, and about myself. Adoption-Related Services is a licensed, nonprofit, well-established adoption agency in good standing that has been in operation since 2006. We have been continuously Hague accredited since 2008 and have been accredited to work within the country of Latvia since 2009. Adoption-Related Services is also a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so know that any donations made to us on behalf of your adoption would be tax deductible to your benefactor. Based in Pennsylvania, we are able to work with clients located in all 50 states, as well as with U.S. citizens residing abroad. We are also able to complete home study reports for families residing in the states of Georgia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Tennessee. More on that a little later. Barbara Lorenzo, our agency's executive director, is a licensed clinical social worker. She and her husband are the proud parents to two wonderful teenage boys who came to them through an adoption from Russia in 2002 when the boys were just 4 years old. She has worked with children and families for well over 20 years and has been in the adoption business for over 17 years. Throughout her career as a clinical social worker, Barbara has worked with families and children in a variety of settings, including protective service and foster care, special needs adoption, psychiatric rehabilitation, troubled youth, and since 2006 as the executive director of ARS. Barbara became aware of the plight of orphan children through her own adoption experience, and this is when she decided that it was her calling to help other families out with their own adoptions. A little bit about myself. My husband and I are the proud parents of two children brought to us through adoption. Our son was adopted domestically as an infant from New York, and our daughter was adopted as an infant from Russia. They are now 20 and 22 years old. I have worked in international adoptions for over 18 years now and have a vast background working in several different countries in Eastern Europe as well as in Guatemala. Additionally, I also own and operate a licensed home study agency which is based in Georgia where I live. My work with Latvia and my work with my home study agency are completely separate from each other unless you reside in Georgia or Tennessee and I'm lucky enough to be able to assist you with the completion of your home study report. I tell you all of this because both Barbara and I have a unique background and that we have been involved in all facets of the adoption process for a long time now and have a lot of experience and knowledge that will be very helpful and beneficial to you during your own adoption process. I became involved with adoptions from Latvia back in 2007 when the former director of one of the larger orphan hosting programs had approached me and asked if I could assist their host families who were adopting from Latvia with their dossier paperwork. I had already been working in international adoptions for almost 8 years at the time and had the experience needed to assist their host families with this process. At that time, you could adopt a child from Latvia independently, meaning that you could adopt the child without needing to work with an adoption agency because the Hague Treaty had not yet been implemented. I happily accepted this offer and began assisting host families with their adoptions from Latvia. Then, in 2008, the United States ratified the Hague Treaty with regard to international adoption. More on that in a bit. Ratification of the Hague Treaty meant that families could no longer adopt from Latvia unless they worked with a Hague-accredited adoption agency. I truly wanted to continue with this line of work as I have always found it to be so rewarding to help older children to find their forever families. So, I connected with Barbara Lorenzo at ARS so that we could work together to help bring children home from Latvia for adoption. Barbara had already been completing safety visits and home study reports for many of the Latvia host families located in Pennsylvania for several years, so she knew Latvia very well. Because we are both adoptive parents ourselves, I think our perspective is extremely helpful in that we have been in your shoes before and understand how important it is to you that your adoptions be completed as quickly and efficiently as possible. Having worked in Latvia for almost 11 years now, I think I can safely say that I've become quite knowledgeable about the adoption process there, although there are certainly new things that I continue to learn each and every day. Barbara and I have a fantastic working relationship with our attorney in Latvia, as well as with the Ministry of Children's Welfare, who oversees adoptions in Latvia. As a matter of fact, in the summer of 2012, we were honored to have had a representative from the Ministry of Children's Welfare, as well as our Latvian attorney, visit with us here in the United States for 2 weeks. It was really wonderful to get to know them better. Here at ARS, we all work together as an amazing team and do all that we can to help you complete this process for you as quickly as possible. Should you decide to work with adoption-related services, I would be your dossier and paperwork person and liaison throughout your entire adoption process, from the very beginning of the paperwork process until your child comes home and then some. I will assist you with every aspect of your adoption and will hold your hand as much or as little as you need. I can assure you that we will correspond a lot and get to know each other very well. Besides having several social workers on staff to assist families with home study reports, ARS also has a very dedicated office staff as well. Sherry Perkey has been with us since 2007, and many of you will get to know Sherry very well as she will be the one sending and collecting required documents from you, typing up grant letters, invoicing you for services, and about a million other things. Sherry always has a smile on and is more than willing to help you with anything that you may need. Gail Schultz has been with us since 2014 and is our behind-the-scenes lady who helps to keep our vast amount of adoption paperwork in order. By now, most of you have probably heard of Dinah Rose, who is an incredible woman and is our attorney in Latvia. She is a dedicated advocate for our families as well as for the children of Latvia. Dinah works tirelessly for Latvia's children, including well into the night when most people should be sleeping. Dinah has also had the experience of being an orphanage director herself many years ago. She is extremely well connected and well respected throughout Latvia. Dinah has another attorney, legal assistant, certified translators, and driver available to assist you with your adoptions. Dinah's niece, Zinta, assists many of our families with the completion of the U.S. Embassy portion of the adoption process. Dinah's daughter, Lelda, is a recent law school graduate and will assist families with the U.S. Embassy portion of the adoption process if Zinta is busy with other families. Dinah's son, Goddess, will be your driver for all official business related to your adoption. Not pictured are Datse and Brigitte, who are certified translators and will be tasked with translating your dossiers and court documentation. Both have been involved with adoptions for many years, and Brigitte used to work at the Ministry of Children's Welfare herself. Please know that ARS is available to you at any time throughout your adoption process. Again, we are unique in that Barb and I are also adoptive parents ourselves. We have been in your shoes before and understand the excitement and the fears that you have about adoption. We understand the financial concerns you all have, as well as your sense of urgency in getting your adoption completed as quickly as possible. I think that this is a perspective that is unique to other agencies. Also, we often work very long hours and can usually respond to your emails immediately, and if there is an emergency or an urgent matter to attend to, we'll be here for you after hours as well if you need us. Many folks often find us catching up on work over the weekend too. Although we may not have the fanciest website, Facebook, or Twitter page, there is no one who's going to work harder for you than we will. As mentioned earlier, I wanted to take just a quick minute to mention the Hague Treaty with regard to international adoption, as you will hear this term a lot throughout your adoption process. The Hague Treaty regarding international adoptions was ratified by the United States and put in place in 2008. Once that was done, it greatly changed the way that international adoptions could be processed. The main goal of the Hague Treaty was to put procedures in place for the protection of both the children and the adoptive parents as well as birth parents. We now have very specific rules, processes, and procedures that we must adhere to regarding international adoptions. Unfortunately, it has made the adoption process more time-consuming and paperwork-intensive, but for good reason. Throughout your entire adoption process, we must always be sure that we are adhering to the rules of the Hague Treaty. I want to now share just a little bit of information about the country of Latvia. Latvia is officially known as the Republic of Latvia. Latvia is a country of over 2 million people located in the Baltic region of Northern Europe and is one of the 3 Baltic states. It is bordered by Estonia, Lithuania, Russia, and Belarus. Its capital city is Riga, and its currency is the euro. Latvia is a relatively stable democracy experiencing rapid economic growth, although their economy does continue to struggle in areas. Latvia is a very adoption-friendly country and has always supported international adoptions. Of the many countries I have worked with personally, Latvia is the only one who I feel would genuinely like to find forever families for their orphan children. In fact, Latvia will send out a list to adoption agencies twice per year with children who are available for adoption, with the hope that agencies may be able to find them families for their orphan children. In Latvia, you will find that about half of their orphan children reside in orphanages and half reside in foster families. Although the official spoken language is Latvian, you will find that about half of the population also speaks Russian. Russia occupied Latvia for much of its history, and the Russian culture can still be felt there today. Next, I would like to talk a little bit about the process of adopting a child from Latvia. Latvia itself is unique in that they remain a very adoption-friendly country. As mentioned earlier, they regularly send out a list of children who become available for adoption and ask if the accredited agencies working within Latvia can help to find families for these children. We are not aware of any other country that does this. They truly try to do the best that they can in taking care of their children with their limited resources, and they are very supportive of adoptive families. So Latvia has had a history of a relatively predictable adoption process, although you do always have to be prepared for the possibility of the unexpected with any international adoption. We will speak more to that in just a bit. The Ministry of Children's Welfare in Latvia also maintains a website with listings of children who have been cleared for adoption. The website address for that listing is up on your screen now. Before you begin the paperwork process to adopt a child from Latvia, please consider very carefully the plan that you have to incorporate this new child into your home and family. Remember that many of the children who have been in state care, particularly older children, come home with a history of trauma, abuse, and neglect, and as such, will often require additional help and resources in order to assimilate them into your family and to help guide them to a brighter future. Adopting an older child is not easy and should not be taken lightly. Please be sure that you have the resources and the emotional ability to help your child to overcome some of the negative aspects of their past. Adopting older children with a past history of trauma is a challenge, and therapy is often needed and recommended. So please be open to that kind of help if necessary. We have a lot of resources available to help you in this regard, so please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you feel that you need additional help for your family or for your child. Our help is always available to you, even well after your adoption has been completed. As well, many of you know that part of the home study process will require 10 hours of adoption training. Some states require even more than that. When you apply to us, we will also send you numerous resource and training articles that we ask you to please read through very carefully. Know that no matter how much you may read about the challenges of adopting an older child, it will still be a very different experience once that child is in your home permanently versus how they were with you when they were here for hosting. You may even see an entirely different child when they come home because they can start to let their guard down now that they have found their permanent forever family. It will take a lot of hard work to all come together as a family, so please be sure that you and your family are able to provide the time and dedication needed to have as smooth a transition as possible for your adopted child and for your family. Once you decide to make an adoption plan, and if you wish to adopt a child who visited through an orphan hosting program, one of the first things we will want to do is to try to verify that your host child is legally cleared for international adoption. Usually, your hosting program would have this information in their interview notes, and they would be happy to answer this for you. But if they are unsure, we can check on this by contacting our attorney in Latvia to see if she can get this information for you. But before we do so, please understand that you should be sure that adoption is definitely something you wish to pursue. The reason for this is that when our attorney calls a child's orphan court and asks about their legal status for adoption, this is a child's private information, and the courts can sometimes get upset with her if they feel that the inquiry about a child was not a serious one toward adoption. Both we and the courts want to spare the child any disappointment they may feel if you should later decide that making an adoption plan is not right for your family. In some cases, the child may already know that you have asked about adopting them, and you may wonder how this could be. Oftentimes, the orphans court may inform the orphanage director or foster family that an inquiry is made about the child and that the inquiry is passed along to the child. While we do not agree with this approach, it can happen. This is another reason to try and be sure as possible that your intention is to adopt, because your child would be very saddened if you did not come for them for an adoption. Please also know that it can sometimes take several weeks for our attorney to obtain this information from the court, as some courts are simply more responsive than others. We know it is really hard to have to wait to learn this information, but do know that we are doing all that we can to get this information for you as quickly as possible. In order for our attorney to inquire about a child's legal status for adoption, we would need their full name, date of birth, region they reside in, orphan court they are assigned to, the name of their orphanage or foster family, and the name of the hosting program you hosted through. We provide an updated list of children to inquire about to our attorney daily once the host children have returned to Latvia. As well, we know that many of you would like to know if your host child wants to be adopted before starting the adoption process, as this only makes sense. In order to make this request, Latvia wants to see that the family has already hosted their child and has made a commitment to adopting this child by either starting a home study report or by sending in an application to their adoption placing agency. If you should decide to work with ARS for your adoption, then we would be considered to be your placing agency. This way, the court knows that the inquiry about one of their children is a serious one toward adoption. Again, the court wants to be sure that you understand that if one of their children is asked if they would like to be adopted into your family, and the child says yes to that, The child will be devastated if you were to later change your mind about adopting them. This can also affect the future of adoptions from Latvia, as well as affect the court's willingness to discuss information about particular children going forward. So we do take this seriously. Our attorney does the best that she can in trying to get these questions answered for you, but we are now finding that many of the orphans' courts will not allow their children to be asked about adoption until the family has an approved dossier in Latvia. The reason for this is because there have been several families over the years who have made a verbal commitment to their host child about adoption and then not have followed through with an adoption plan. This devastates the child and angers the courts, as you might imagine. So again, we will try to get this information and questions answered for you as well, but we cannot promise that the court will comply with this request and allow the child to be spoken to about adoption. We realize that this puts you in a very difficult position, one that we will do all that we can to help you work through. If you have not previously hosted a child and are considering going straight to an adoption plan from Latvia for what is considered to be a blind referral, then once your dossier arrives in Latvia, it is approved by the Ministry of Children's Welfare, and as soon as a child becomes available for adoption who meets the age and gender parameters of the child you wish to adopt, we are sent the child's referral information to forward on to you. Your referral information will also include a picture of the child. In this case, the referral may take a little longer depending upon the parameters of the child you hope to adopt. Once you receive your referral, you are given an opportunity to ask important questions about the child that you would need to know before you accept the referral for adopting that child. The remainder of the adoption process would be the same regardless of whether you hosted your prospective adoptive child or if you adopted a child referred to you directly by the Ministry of Children's Welfare. Once you make the decision to formally move forward with an adoption plan, you will want to send an application into the adoption agency with whom you would like to work. Each agency needs to have an application on file for any clients they are working with, as the application gives us consent to work with your home study agency, with immigration, etc. The next thing to do for your adoption would be to engage the services of a Hague-accredited home study agency in your state to begin your home study report. I will also assist you with locating an agency in your state and will work closely with them during the completion of your report to make sure that it meets both immigration and Latvia's guidelines. I will also provide you with a list of questions to ask the home study agencies, as you call them, to help you in making a decision about with whom to work for your home study report. Once you have hired a home study agency, I would send them additional information that they need in order to complete your report. Please be sure that you have signed on with a placement agency, for example, such as Adoption-Related Services, before your home study report is issued, as it must first be approved by that agency. The home study process will typically take approximately 8 to 10 weeks with most agencies. Barbara and I can complete the reports more quickly if you are able to work with us for the home study. The home study process will entail meetings with your home study agency social worker, collecting numerous documents, completing criminal background checks, a medical exam, employment verifications and financials, and the completion of the minimum of 10 hours of Hague-approved adoption training mentioned earlier. The home study report is also an opportunity for one-on-one time with your social worker, who will begin to train you on the challenges of adopting an older child into your home and how to help your child work through some of the early childhood trauma and neglect that they may have suffered. Once your home study report has been completed, you will file your paperwork with U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services, also known as USCIS. At this point, you will be seeking immigration approval to bring an orphan child into the U.S. to reside here with you permanently. The form that you will file for this is called the I-800A form. The main component of the I-800A form is your home study report. You will also be fingerprinted by USCIS. Your immigration approval typically arrives 6 to 8 weeks after filing the I-800A form. As a side note, anyone who may be interested in adopting a child who will be turning 16 during the adoption process must file this form before the child's 16th birthday, or they will age out and no longer be eligible for an international adoption. There are additional parameters for 16-year-olds, so please contact me directly if this applies to you, and we can discuss these at length. As well, children can be adopted up to the age of 18 if and only if they are also being adopted along with a sibling under the age of 16, and if the adoption can be finalized in Latvia before the child's 18th birthday. After the I-800A form is filed, we will begin the process of preparing your dossier for Latvia. A dossier is a legalized set of documents required by the Ministry of Children's Welfare and the local orphans court in Latvia, describing and approving you as an adoptive family. All documentation in your dossier must be legalized at the highest level in the United States. This is called apostilling your paperwork. Once your dossier has been sent to Latvia, it is submitted for translation, which can take about 2 to 4 weeks. After translation and immigration approval on your I-800A form, your dossier is brought to the Ministry of Children's Welfare for review and approval. The ministry will then initiate the process of having the local orphans court verify that your child is legally cleared for adoption and wishes to be adopted. The court will have your child's court-appointed social worker go out to speak with the child to see if they want to be adopted into your family. If they say yes to being adopted and they have not already been cleared for international adoption, a court hearing will then be scheduled to do that. Finally, a special interest hearing will also be scheduled by the court to be sure that the court feels that adopting the child into your family specifically is in the best interest of the child. Once the orphans court holds these 2 hearings and sends the results of each back to the Ministry of Children's Welfare, you will receive an official referral from the ministry with additional health and social background information on your prospective adoptive child. This referral is sent to us and we will pass it along to you. The referral will also likely include some information as to why the child is in state care and whether or not they have any immediate biological family. Our agency director then does a fantastic job at explaining to you the information contained within your child's referral, as well as pointing out any areas of concern. If you have questions that are critical to your decision to move forward with the adoption of the child you are referred, this would be the time to ask those questions of the ministry, and they will investigate and formally provide you with answers within a week or 2. Once you decide to accept the referral of your child, about a week later, you will be formally invited by Latvia to begin the adoption process. The ministry will send on to us what is called your allowance or letter of invitation. We will forward the letter of invitation on to you once it is received. Once our attorney sees the letter of invitation, she can go to the local orphans court and ask for travel dates for your first trip. You are usually invited to go to Latvia about 3 to 4 weeks after accepting your referral. From the time you submit an approved dossier to the Ministry of Children's Welfare until the time you travel on your first trip is typically about 3 to 4 months, provided your child's paperwork is all in order in Latvia. Sometimes there can be a holdup with your official referral on the Latvian side if your prospective adoptive child has not been completely cleared for both domestic and international adoption. Adoption is a 2-part process in Latvia, and the child has to be cleared for domestic adoption first, and then they have to be cleared by the court to be adopted internationally. This second court hearing is merely a formality and nothing to worry about, but it is often not initiated until there is a dossier in Latvia to adopt the child. For blind referrals, for example, all children who have not been identified through hosting but were already cleared at the ministry level, all of these steps have already been taken care of prior to the receipt of your referral. You will be making 3 trips to Latvia to complete the adoption process. The first trip is for your first court hearing and the completion of the required bonding period under Latvian adoption law. This bonding period is necessary before the court will allow your child to leave Latvia with you. This court hearing is also an opportunity for you to legally change your child's name if you and the child decide to do so. The first trip to Latvia typically lasts an average of about 2 to 3 weeks if you have hosted your child. With hosting, you are already considered to have started the bonding period with your child, and this reduces your first trip. The only exception to this is the region of Riga, where the first trip is a minimum of 3 weeks long, even if you have hosted your child. If you have not hosted the child you plan to adopt, you will be required to stay in Latvia longer to get to know your child under the guidance of the court. This can potentially add up to 1 week to that first trip. In both cases, please add an additional 2 days to this first trip if you plan to bring your child home with you, as you will need this time to obtain your child's visitor's visa. The visitor's visa allows the child to return to the United States and stay with you for the remainder of the adoption process. As just mentioned, the length of your first trip is Latvia's required bonding period under their adoption law, and the length of this bonding period is entirely up to your judge in Latvia to determine. So unfortunately, we do not have any control over the exact amount of time that you will be away on the first trip. Both adoptive parents, if applicable, must be present for this first trip, and your adoptive child will stay with you while you are in Latvia. You will go before the judge at the beginning and then again at the end of this trip, and you will be visited by a court-appointed social worker 1 to 3 times in between. The social worker will give a written report back to the judge as to how you and your child are bonding with each other. At the end of your first trip, when you go before the judge a second time, you may request that the judge permit you to bring your child back to the United States with you while you complete the remainder of the adoption process. It is not a requirement to bring your home after the first trip, but it is an option available to you and one that we strongly recommend if possible, as it allows for a longer bonding period and allows for your child to get better acquainted with the English language and with their new life in America. After this first trip, you will come home and file additional immigration paperwork called the I-800 form. The I-800 form identifies the specific child you are adopting to immigration, and you will wait for the second approval from them in order to move forward with the remainder of the adoption process. After the I-800 approval is received, there is one more form to file called the DS-260 form, which will automatically initiate your child's Social Security number once your adoption has been completed. The Social Security number will be sent to you a couple of months after you're home from trip 3. A few weeks after you arrive home from your first trip, you will ask your home study agency to visit your home and produce what we call a hosting report that you will bring back with you to Latvia on your second trip. This report would detail for the judge how your child is doing in your home during the adoption process or the bonding period. This report is called the hosting report because you're considered to be hosting your child between the first and the third trip of the adoption process. Of course, I will prompt you for all of these things at the appropriate times. Your child will be coming home with you on the same visitor's visa that they came home with for the hosting program. Please note, if you bring your child home from Latvia after the first trip, their visitor's visa does not allow them to be enrolled in any school full-time, public or private. However, they are permitted to audit up to 18 hours of classroom study per week, provided they are not earning any school credit. Know that your local school system will accept your child regardless of their immigration status, but the U.S. Embassy does not allow your child to attend school on a full-time basis while they are here on a visitor's visa. Your second trip to Latvia occurs approximately 3 to 4 months after the first. The appearance at your second court hearing is when your adoption will be considered finalized in Latvia. Once your adoption is finalized in Latvia, it cannot be reversed. Only one adoptive parent and any child aged 12 years and older must travel back to Latvia on this second trip. Any child under the age of 12 can remain home. You will typically spend 3 days in Latvia as you leave to come back the day after you appear in court. After this second court hearing, there is a mandatory 20-day waiting period, and then an adoption decree and a new birth certificate will be produced by the court for your child. These documents will be translated and given to you on your third trip. Your third and final trip to Latvia will occur approximately 6 to 8 weeks after the second trip, and it is your required embassy appointment where you will obtain an immigrant visa for your child. Only one adoptive parent and all adoptive children, regardless of age, must travel back to Latvia on this third trip. This trip typically lasts 5 days in Latvia, as there is a required embassy interview, medical exam, new passport, and additional documentation that must be completed. The reason that this trip occurs so much later after trip 2 is because, as mentioned earlier, Latvia requires a mandatory 20-day waiting period before your child's new birth certificate and adoption decree can be issued. Both of these documents are needed for your embassy appointment on trip 3. When you arrive back to the U.S. after this third trip, your child will now be considered to be a U.S. citizen. A Social Security number will automatically be generated for your child as well. All children over the age of 14 will have the additional task of appearing at a swearing-in ceremony with immigration a couple of months after they come home. U.S. Immigration will notify you by letter of when the swearing-in ceremony will occur. Please note that unfortunately there have recently been tremendous delays with the scheduling of the ceremony. One of the most common questions we are asked all of the time is, how long will it take to complete my adoption? That is a hard question to answer because each and every adoption experience is completely different from the next. There are so many variables to consider that it is truly hard to predict. Our best guesstimate on the time to complete an adoption right now would be approximately 10 to 12 months from the very start of your home study report process to arriving home after your third trip, if there are no unforeseen glitches and if you can complete your paperwork quickly. Also, do keep in mind that some regions within Latvia simply work more quickly than others, and this can affect your timeline as well. Our attorney will do all that she can to assist you with a speedy adoption, but do keep in mind that as an attorney, she can only legally represent you for your adoption. She cannot make a court move more quickly than the court wants to move, and this can sometimes feel frustrating to adoptive parents. Just think about how the court systems work here in the United States. Attorneys do not have the authority to set court hearings, and it is no different in Latvia. But truly, there is no attorney who is better, more respected, or more well-connected than Dinah Rose is. So know that your case is being handled by the very best attorney there is in Latvia. Once your adoption has been completed, we would ask that you please make copies of all of your final documents that you brought home from Latvia and send them to us for your file. Also, if you have not already done so, you will want to schedule a full medical and dental examination of your child to get a baseline reading of any issues that may need to be taken care of now that your child is covered under your medical insurance plan. We would recommend that your child initially be seen by an international adoption specialist who is experienced with seeing children adopted from other countries who may have resided in an institution. We will have provided you with a list of these specialists at the time of your official referral. As mentioned earlier, a Social Security number will automatically be generated for your child as you have been instructed to complete this process by filing the DS-260 form mentioned earlier. Once their Social Security number is received, you will want to apply for your child's U.S. passport. As well, you will want to have an educational assessment of your child completed in their native language to get an approximate baseline of the grade they should be studying in school and be advised of any learning challenges that your child may have. Your local public school system can assist you with scheduling this assessment and will provide your child with any services that are needed to ensure their success in school. Having an educational assessment completed in your child's native language will help greatly in terms of grade placement in school. Most children perform best when they start school a year or two behind their chronological peers to allow them time to obtain the language comprehension needed to be successful in school. Your County Department of Education can assist you with scheduling this assessment. It is imperative that you consider finding a trained therapist who can begin helping your child to work through some of the early childhood trauma and abuse as soon as they have learned enough of the English language to do so. We have a list of therapists by state and will provide these to you along with your welcome packet. This step is not to be taken lightly and is key to the successful integration of your new child into the family. Next, you may want to consider the process of readopting your child in your state. Not all states require that you readopt your child within your state. However, we will strongly urge you to get this done. Readopting your child is also called the domestication of a foreign adoption and will grant your child a U.S.-issued birth certificate that will be entitled Certificate of Foreign Birth. Most states will allow you to initiate the readoption process on your own without the assistance of an adoption attorney. Why is this important? If you were ever to lose or misplace your child's Latvian birth certificate, it cannot be replaced. Readopting your child in the U.S. ensures that your state's Vital Records Office will always have a copy of their birth certificate on file. Finally, you will also be completing a 1- and 2-year post-adoption report that will be due in Latvia on the 1- and 2-year anniversaries of your second trip. These reports allow Latvia to see how your child is doing in your home. This report is completed by your home study agency exactly the same way as the hosting report you had completed after coming home from your first trip. Please be aware of the tremendous importance of completing these 2 reports after your adoption. Failure to do so can impact adoptions for future families. As well, Latvia has recently begun reporting families who are delinquent with these reports to the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Embassy, and no one wants to have that happen. One of the reasons that these reports are so important is because your child will be retaining dual citizenship until at least 18 years of age, so Latvia still considers your child to be a citizen of Latvia. Because we know this is a critical component in making a decision to adopt from Latvia, we would also like to talk to you about the cost of your adoption. We believe in preparing you completely for this process, and that contrary to what you may learn through other adoption sources, it is highly improbable that you would be able to complete the entire adoption process for less than $35,000 total for the adoption of one child. Remember that a large part of your adoption costs are for the airfare required to complete your 3 trips to Latvia. Thus, if you are able to get Sky Miles donated to you, this will help to greatly reduce your overall adoption expenses. The fee schedule that we have already sent to some of you lists all of the fees for your adoption from soup to nuts. When we state that total costs for the adoption of one child are approximately $35,000 to $37,000, we are including everything from the start of your homestead report down to the last postage stamp and long-distance phone call that you would make for your adoption. To lighten that heavy blow just a little bit, ARS is currently waiving the $300 application fee for new families to help with some of the stress of adoption costs. Also, the vast majority of you will qualify to receive the adoption tax credit once your adoption has been finalized. The adoption tax credit means that in the year you complete your adoption, for example in 2018, you will receive up to $13,840 per child back from the federal government when you file your federal income taxes for that year. We will discuss a little more about this in just a minute. There are also numerous organizations who are offering adoption grants, and we can send you a list of these sources as well. Remember that others can make tax-deductible donations on your behalf to help lower your adoption costs. We have had quite a few of our families fundraise for their entire adoption costs. We have been told that some sources are quoting adoption costs as low as $25,000 for your total adoption expenses for the adoption of one child from Latvia. We do not feel that this is an accurate representation, and again, we would much rather honestly prepare you for this process than to throw out a dollar amount that we do not feel is accurate just to sway you to work with us. Please be aware that the only difference in fees between us and some of the other adoption agencies recommended to you is in regard to the agency fee itself, and this is minimal. We use the same attorney in Latvia as another 2 adoption agencies who may be referred to you, so besides the agency fees, every other expense for your adoption would be about the same, regardless of which agency you choose. Your choice with whom to work will come down to preference, reputation, availability, and efficiency. We would welcome you to please check many, many references and talk to lots of other adoptive families about their experiences and their total adoption expenses before making a final decision with whom to work. We would much rather be completely honest with you about the costs and have you be prepared for that than to try to win you over by quoting lower costs only for you to find out later on that wasn't realistic and you were left scrambling trying to find additional financial resources. As well, The Hague Treaty with regard to international adoption requires that all adoptive families be treated the same. Some agencies state that they are offering you a discounted fee, when in actuality it is simply the same fee being charged by other agencies. This is not permitted according to Hague Treaty rules. Everyone must be charged the same fee that's working under each agency. Please carefully review any fee schedules that you are given and focus on the total actual agency fee itself, as all other costs associated with your adoption will be relatively the same between the agencies you may have been referred to by your hosting programs. We would also like to mention that we have a bank account set up for our attorney here in the United States so that you will have limited amounts of cash to carry with you on your trips to Latvia. We are able to deposit your in-country costs directly into her account for you. Carrying large amounts of cash to Latvia has always been of concern to families, and we just wanted you to know that you will not have to worry about that with our agency. There are many options available to you to assist you with your adoption expenses. As mentioned earlier, one of the most important to point out is the adoption tax credit. The adoption tax credit is a permanent tax credit under the Hope for Children Act that currently stands at $13,840 per child for any adoption completed during the 2018 calendar year. What this means is that when you file your taxes for the year in which your adoption was finalized, assuming it's 2018, you will get back up to $13,840 per child in federal taxes that you have already paid in as a refund, provided your combined family income is below the maximum allowed. You are not able to get back more money than you have paid in federal taxes, so if you cannot take the full credit the first year, you can roll over any unused tax credit to the following tax years until you receive the entire amount back. The adoption tax credit typically increases a couple of $100s per year. So since all of you will be finalizing an adoption, well, some of you will be finalizing an adoption next year, your adoption tax credit may be slightly higher per child. Also note that there are many other resources for obtaining monies towards your adoption expenses, and we have a very comprehensive list of these resources contained within our information packet. We would like to cover a few hot topics and point of interest now. Please note that current adoption rules in Latvia state that there must be a minimum of 18 years age difference between the prospective adoptive child and both adoptive parents. Recently enacted adoption legislation has opened this rule up to being challenged if the prospective adoptive parents can show that there is a close familial bond to the child they hope to adopt. To date, we have had several exceptions granted to this age requirement rule. In these cases, the adoptive parents were close to the 18-year age difference and had hosted their child on 2 separate occasions, showing Latvia that there was a clear familial bond, emotional bond, between the prospective adoptive parents and the child. Our attorney has advised that some courts in Latvia refuse to make any exceptions to this 18-year age rule, so each challenge to this new rule must be considered on a case-by-case basis. Also note that the Ministry of Children's Welfare has advised that they will not consider approving any adoption where there is less than 16 years age difference between the prospective adoptive parents and the adoptive child. Also note that after each hosting program, Latvia requests that each adoption agency provide to them a list of children who have been hosted and who will be adopted, either by their host family or by a family they met during hosting. This is called the ministry list and must be sent to the Ministry of Children's Welfare within 30 days of the end of the hosting program. The Ministry of Children's Welfare is the main government body in Latvia that oversees adoptions. So theoretically, if your prospective adoptive child is on this list, the ministry would then notify our attorney should a family from another country wish to adopt your host child, or if another hosting program wishes to include your host child in their hosting program, so that you can be given priority because you have already established an emotional bond with that child. Know that Latvian citizens will always be given priority when it comes to adopting one of their children, regardless of how many times you may have hosted the child. But once your adoption process has formally started within Latvia, they are considered to be your child and other foreign families may not adopt them. In regard to the ministry list, if you decide that you would like to work with our agency for your adoption, please send me an email as soon as possible expressing your desire to have your host child placed on the ministry list. Please only place your host child on the ministry list if you are 110% committed to completing an adoption plan for that child, because once a child is placed on that list, they lose the opportunity to be adopted by another family or to participate in another hosting program, which would not be fair to them should you be unable to complete the adoption process. The information that I need from you for the ministry list is your last name, the hosting program you hosted through, the child's full name, date of birth, region they reside in, orphans court they are assigned to, and the name of their orphanage or foster family. We would also like to take a minute to address the ability to have contact with your prospective adoptive child once they return to Latvia after hosting. First, let me explain a little bit about the rules of the Hague Treaty, which oversees adoptions from Latvia by U.S. citizens. According to the rules of the Hague Treaty, there is not supposed to be any contact between the prospective adoptive parents, the orphanage, the foster family in Latvia, and the child they are adopting during the adoption process unless permission for that contact has been granted by the central authority in Latvia, in this case, the Ministry of Children's Welfare. However, we do realize that it would be difficult to ask any family to cut off all contact with their prospective adoptive child once they return to Latvia after hosting. Because this issue has become so sensitive in Latvia, we would ask that all contact with your host child be kept light in nature until your dossier has been submitted to the ministry for approval. For example, when speaking with your host child, feel free to talk about how their day was, how school was, how they're feeling, and things like that. But please do not discuss adoption in any way, shape, or form, even if your child brings it up. Once your dossier is actually at the ministry, you can then freely discuss your adoption plans with your prospective adoptive child. Also, please do not discuss fees associated with your adoption. The talk of money and expenses can be misunderstood due to cultural differences and can cause an uproar in Latvia where adoptions are technically free to Latvian citizens. As well, please do not make any promises to your host child or say anything that can be perceived as persuading your child toward adoption. The courts in Latvia have become increasingly upset with host families who maintain close contact with their host child after hosting, so it is very important to keep any conversations with your host child light in nature and steer clear of any talk about adoption. Also, please be very careful about any information that you give or receive from your host child's caregivers. Many times, the information that they give to you, although given with the best of intentions, is often inaccurate. Only our attorney is able to get accurate information about any particular adoption situation. Please also note that our attorney would be unable to verify every piece of information that may be provided to you by your child's orphanage or foster family, as this takes a lot of time away from her legal responsibilities. Just know that she is on top of your case and will do all that she can to get you to Latvia as quickly as possible. And do keep in mind that according to the Hague Treaty rules, it would be inappropriate to ask your child's caregivers specific personal questions about your child or about their adoption status. Just please be careful. Although it would be best to not have contact with anyone in Latvia during the adoption process, we do realize this may not be realistic for host families in particular. Also, keep in mind that anything you post online in any capacity can and will make its way back to Latvia and could affect your ability to adopt, as well as affect the adoptions of families that come after you. This brings us to the topic of Facebook. There is no doubt that there is a wealth of wonderful information being posted and shared on Facebook about Latvian adoptions, and the families on there are of great support to each other. But do remember that when you read information posted online, that every adoption case is different from each other, and sometimes cases have to be moved along more quickly than others in Latvia due to a child's medical needs or because they are aging out for adoption. Also, be aware of the importance of not posting personal information about your prospective adoptive child online in any forum. Even private groups are not private, and Latvia has found some information posted about their children that has caused them to get quite upset. Until your adoption is finalized in Latvia after your second trip, your child's information is private, so please protect it. This includes not posting pictures or the names of your prospective adoptive child online until after your adoption is finalized on trip 2. Also, again, please be careful that any information that you post online is not going to upset Latvia because they often do find out what you are saying online. Always keep in mind that comments online can be misinterpreted or misunderstood in a foreign language, and online postings have created some issues within the orphanages and the courts once they get wind of them and can create issues. Thank you for understanding. Post-adoption reporting, as mentioned earlier, we cannot stress to you enough the importance of completing the required 1 and 2 year post-adoption reports that Latvia requires. The future of adoptions from Latvia requires that this rule be followed. And finally, but certainly extremely important, many of you are aware that this past fall, the head of the Ministry of Children's Welfare in Latvia had proposed that changes be made to Latvia's adoption rules. Some of his proposed changes included limiting adoptions to only those children who are aged 12 and older residing in orphanages. Younger siblings would be able to come as well if applicable. He had proposed that children residing in foster families not be permitted to be adopted at all. Unfortunately for him, these proposed changes were not met with the enthusiasm needed for a vote in Latvia's parliament. However, we want to be honest and advise you that he has proposed that these changes be revisited after the elections are held toward the end of 2018. We do not know what, if anything, will come out of this, but since there is the potential that adoptions could be affected, this is certainly information that you need to know. On a more positive note, when the changes were proposed last fall, Latvia did say that they would grandfather adoptions that were already in process. We say this to let you know that if you are certain that making an adoption plan feels right for your family, please do not delay and start the process right away. Up on your screens now is a quick list of facts in regard to adoptions from Latvia. Please take a moment to look through the list of items and please let me know if there's anything on there that you would like me to expand upon. That about wraps up a summary of the adoption process from Latvia. I would also like to give you my direct phone number in case you have any questions later on. My direct phone number is 770-514-7324. You may also email me at kb@adoption-related-services.org. You can also reach out to our director, Barbara Lorenzo, directly at 717-227-9560. If you would like, I would be happy to send you an information packet that we hope will help to answer some more of your questions, as well as provide you with information, an application, and references for our agency if you're interested. Please call or email me and I can get that sent out to you right away. Also, don't forget to let the agency you hire know if you would like your child to be placed on the ministry list for children who are being adopted by their host family. We also plan to post this talk on YouTube, so if you would like the link to that once it is up, please email me and let me know so I can send that to you. While we open this talk up to questions now, Please enjoy photos of some of our families who have adopted children from Latvia. If I don't answer a question that has been typed in during our talk, please bring that to my attention as I don't want to miss any questions for you. Thank you so much. Does anybody have questions that I can answer for you? Anybody at all? Let me get out of this and see if anything has been typed in. Still here. Does anybody have questions for me? Is the list of children from the document from Latvia mean that their parental rights have been terminated? If you're talking about the list that appears on the Ministry of Children's Welfare website, that list, yes. If that child appears on the list, that means parental rights have been legally terminated and the child is cleared for adoption. You're welcome. Anything else I can answer for anybody? How many adoptions from Latvia did ARS complete in 2017? If you're looking at the number of adoptions or the number of children, let's say the number of children, I would estimate, I'd have to count it up, but probably about 60. We have between 40 and 45 open files at any given time, meaning that many families at any given time, and each family takes about a year to complete the adoption process. So I hope that answered that question. If you want more details, just let me know. I can get those for you. Any other questions? I'm almost at the end of my beautiful pictures of all these children. Okay, one last call for questions. If there are no other questions, I will wrap it up. Oh, here's one more. Do most families adopt after hosting or do they adopt through a blind referral? I would say probably about 90% of our families do adopt as a result of having hosted the child. But we certainly have any number of blind referrals each year, and knock on wood, all of the families who have looked for a blind referral has successfully adopted a child within the age range that they were hoping for, so they've all been very happy. Anything else for me? In closing, I'd like to thank you again all for taking the time out of your busy evening to join us, and we hope to be able to talk to you all personally very soon. Please know again that ARS would be more than honored should you decide to work with our agency for your adoption. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and thank you once more again. It was really been a pleasure. Have a good night.